Good to go.
I think so.
Stephen and the team greatly appreciate what you have presented, and I think it is an important item for Nephio to make the life easier for people who planning to create operators. So thank you very much. And with that, Victor.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot. Well, the idea of this is mainly to try to talk about a little bit more about this project, which is the test infra. So before like starting in this particular topic, I would like to share like in retrospective what I have seen. So coming from those back days in OpenStack, I guess one of the greatest things like most of the contributors has the ability to have the full OpenStack services in their own VM. So using, DevStack and all these tools. And also I remember like in OpenNFV days, like where we have to request to Jack Morgan to set up the lab environments and all these things. So I probably in retrospective about all these different communities, even in Kubernetes and now like Nephio, I guess the best testing lab that you can have it is your own computer. So that's why my own preference, instead of like relying on Sagar or like starting requesting more and more resources and trying to figure it out, I think in that way is even better if we can. I mean, eventually we have to test everything in a production environment, but in order to make more developer friendly, I think that we have to make those environments accessible to the contributors. So, well, I'm going to start like this talk about test infra. So, but given that we have like new corners in the room, so I'm going to split like the session in two different portions of the concepts. So the first thing is I'm going to talk about a little bit about the project, like the different pieces and all the things that we haven't done. And later, maybe we can spend some time trying to talk about the different improvements that we can do for the next for this and the next release. So, just in general, the test infra project is a project who has a lot of things. It has Ansible playbooks to bootstrap the server. We have also another one which is targeting to improve or to provide the installation portion. So we create like also a KPT Ansible model. So given that we are using KPT and we rely on all these things, and also we have the ability to provision the sandbox locally or remotely. So we have like a background file where enable us to create that particular environment. And also we have Terraform files where we use it in our CI to provision the VM and to run all these scripts. Obviously, also we have certain Docker artifacts. So we need a place for storing all this information. And the last but not least, we have multiple scripts or bash scripts that we use for testing our end-to-end. So just the first thing is like all this. If you go to the website and you see the structure of the project, you will see a bunch of folders. So I just try to put all this in a miscellaneous area. So basically, it's like something that is necessary for certain operations, but you don't have to deal with most of your daily basis activities. So we have obviously our GitHub folder for hosting all the templates for GitHub. We have some assets, so because we store certain images for the wiki, and the images folder hosts like the Docker images folders files for certain operations. Pro, we use it for our continuous integration. So that's where we store like the configuration and we make all these things. And last is like another additional folder which is for toolings. So the first most important thing is like the E2E folder. This particular folder contains like another subfolders, and that is one interesting piece, like that Fiacra and also others were contributing this particular piece. So we try to reduce the preparation or like the time what we are taking for provisioning the VM. So one initiative was like create like a pre-baked VM image. So we have the source code in this particular place. So essentially, basically just provision a VM, and we use Packer for well, grabbing up everything and putting in a more consumable VM. So we have many things to do. I mean, it's something that we haven't explored yet. So we need to do something to expose those VMs for external users to consume it. And also we have a put a place like a procedure to start cleaning the images that are generated. So, but now everything is there. So just talking about the CI process. So every time that some new contributor submit a pull request, we try to run in all this process. We have multiple scripts, and the idea is to unify the process. We don't want to have like a multiple installers, like a multiple way to test things. So these are like quite diagram that we have. I mentioned about the Terraform scripts. So the Terraform scripts are again in the folder structure. We are under the E2E. There is like a Terraform subfolder, and that contains all the calls that the CI is making every time that someone submits a pull request. So as you can see, and this particular place, like the Terraform and Google's Cloud, can be easily replaced to use Vagrant. So if you're using Vagrant to provision your VM locally, so it's ordered like just like using the Vagrant file, and it's going to go through the same call. Like it's just going to start calling the init script, and the init script is going to manage everything. So going more deeply in about the init script, it's just an bash script. So it's quite simple, a couple of just like maybe 200 lines of code, but it's very easy to read it. So the idea of this is like having like the main point for provisioning the VM. So you can call this particular script externally. So you have like a local VM that was provisioning by your employee, or even user your local computer. You can just call this particular script, and all the provisioning process is going to happen in your computer. So the way to control the workflow about this initialization script is using environment variables. So you can define certain things, and you can customize a little bit the process. So things like, for example, if you want to use any particular release tag, so you can specify that, or so you want to provide different sources, it's also possible to do it. So the next thing is obviously the installation of the sandbox. So this particular script is the main thing that is going to start calling the sandbox or the Ansible playbooks, and is going to install like as I mentioned before, like the Bootstrap Ansible role, which is going to prepare your VM or your local environment to create like all the pre-requirements that you need. Could be like your Kubernetes cluster with all the kernel modules and certain additional things. And the install Ansible role is like for the installation of Nephio packages. I mean, you don't have to use Ansible to install all these things, but it's highly recommended because using this particular approach, we're doing things in parallel, so which is very beneficial in terms of like a saving time. And the last thing is like the end-to-end. So basically, this other script is another main point where we are controlling the execution of the end-to-end test. So this is quite interesting because initially, when we start defining for the first release, what we did is we tried to explain in a document all the steps, like how Nephio works, and we provide certain guides, and actually have access to the guides. Okay, it's this one. Hopefully I can. So Yeah, basically in the documentation of Nephio, we have these particular guides where like we were explaining how Nephio works and all the steps that the people has to do it once that the environment is provisioned. So, and I know that I choose this particular step. So, for example, for the free 5G, we have this step 9, which is modifying certain components. We were talking about like how Nephio do day one or day 2 operations. So in this particular, like with code, like a little bit explanation explains how do you perform those operations in Nephio. So as you can see, there is a lot of bunch of instructions here. So what we have in the test infra documentation, we have all these instructions. We have it we have tested, and every single time that someone makes a release or where every time, because we have a periodic job, so it's always running all these tests and making sure that, so at least what we are promising in the documentation, it is still like working and functioning. So all the resources, all the things that we promised to use in the documentation are hosted here in this end-to-end folder. So we are not hiding anything. So basically that particular that's a particular folder. So if you want to know how that works, it's a good place to be there. So well, hopefully that gives a little bit about the idea about this particular project. I think that's the best place to start, like exploring Nephio and understand a little bit the different ways to use it and the ways to install certain portion of the project. And the nice thing is, like, for this particular project, you don't require too much hardware resources, so you can easily deploy something simple in your computer. So the next step, like there are obviously multiple things that we can improve it. I just list a few of them. So in terms like trying to save some time, so maybe we can use this Creo project. So basically, if you're not familiar with this project, so basically you can do checkpoints and restores of certain running containers. That's one of the benefits, is like, so you can avoid certain cold starts. It's very useful for avoiding to, load certain things, and maybe we can integrate it as part of the CI process. So start like creating checkpoints and maybe exporting to, and also it's also good for forensics. So you can also use it for if there was a problem in the CI. So maybe we can use that particular checkpoint and try to replicate the same issue locally or something. And given that we are using Kind, maybe that could be a good fit. Well, this particular project has been there for a while. Maybe it has like some it's an experimental feature, like, and I think that is quite related to Docker. So I'm not sure if we can just use in another Docker, other container runtimes like a Podman or NerdCTL or something like that. So, and also I checked, like, I guess it's supported by Ubuntu Yami and Fedora 38. So probably something that we have to consider. But yeah. Another thing is, like, we have at least we have 3 Ansible roles that are embedded in the test infra project. So I think that we have to extract them and put it in a separate folder. Maybe that can be easy to consume. One of them, well, I mentioned 2 because it's a bootstrap and the install Ansible roles. But we have a third one, which is like quite not related with Nephio, which is KPT. So maybe we can also start like thinking about donating these or like putting away like because I mean, when I started like working in Nephio, I didn't see like someone consuming the KPT client from Ansible. So that's where I create like this particular. So again, if we can just extract it from there, maybe we can make more consumable and more exposure and a lot of benefits, and maybe we can have their own release cycle or anything. So probably one of the cons that I could see, like probably is like I haven't tested. Probably we have like hard dependencies that we have to think about, like how to make sure that it's not broken anything. So another thing is like something that I have recently started like exploring. So I just found like this QUTTL framework, like this Kubernetes testing tool. So as I said before, so we have a lot of bash scripts here. So where we are like having to figure out like to create our own waiting functions, and we have to wait for certain resources. And so this is useful because most of us know how to create like a bash scripts, but in terms like user friendly, it's not. I mean, we're not using the cloud nativeness way to do these things. So my proposal is like if we use this particular framework, like we can migrate to something where we describe, start doing like a small POCs. So for example, we can describe the test steps like using these declarative forms. So as you can see in this particular case, I'm just applying what resource. My assertion is to expect certain Kubernetes resources. For example, in this particular case, I just have a particular package variant set. So when I apply this, obviously Nephio is going to start like creating multiple things, and those multiple things are things like a package variant set, obviously a package variant with a specific name, maybe certain workloads, clusters, and some other clusters, or even a secret. So all of these things has to be eventually appear as part of the resources. So again, there is like a several. So we can define multiple steps, like test steps, and make it more like cloud native way, like using declarative forms, which is I guess is more readable, more beneficial, but for newcomers. Probably the only disadvantage that I can see is like if we implement this, so eventually we are going to break the contract between what we have in the documentation. So because in the documentation we are like saying few things here, so things that we maybe can apply in different way. So that's one of the things that we have to consider. But for that particular thing, well, this is another example. But in order to not break that compatibility, I also found like this other interesting tool. So we have that problem where like we are working in something that modifies everything in the project, but we don't go back to the documentation, and we are not making sure that those changes are reflected in the documentation. So basically, this particular project, what the promise is like, so you add like a certain checks. So basically, when you adopt these tools in your project, so the project is going to use the source code that is embedded in your documentation, and is going to making sure that it's not breaking anything. Like, so probably it's like a good promise for us using this, because in that way we can validate that the documentation that we are providing is still in synchronization with the code and the things that we are doing. So from my understanding, this is like a new tool. Maybe we can require like a certain more investigation and learning about that, and maybe it's not suitable for our project. But yeah, it's another thing. Another area that we can improve it, where we can replace MetalLV for the CAN cloud provider. So most of you don't, I'm pretty sure that they are not using MetalLV services per se, probably rely on the cloud provider services. So this is like a way that the community is like offering a way to mimic the functionality of the cloud provider. So using this tool, I also started experimenting. Is reasonable. I mean, the good benefit about this is like maybe we can reduce the number of components for Nephio, and maybe we can simplify the installation. So the other disadvantage is that they just released this project, so probably they're going to modify a lot of things, and also that requires certain level of configuration in Docker to make sure that, I mean, you cannot customize the IP range that the server is going to take it. The other way, for example, what MetalLB allows you use to define certain IP range. So, and this is like a little bit more hacky in that way. So, but the other thing is like, this has a load balancing mechanism internally, which is most of the cloud providers offer. Anyway, so yeah, this is another alternative. And I guess, well, the last thing that I have in the areas that we can improve it is we can use external services like TTL. TTL is like a Docker registry where you can put images just for like for testing purposes. Obviously, what TTL offers is like eventually those images are going to be destroyed. So it's good also for testing and replicating things. So maybe we can use these kind of services for during the CI to try to replicate certain things. So again, those are the possibilities that we can use it. So and also investigate it. And well, that's I'm also more open to ideas and to collaborate and try to make the test infra even better. So any particular question or like something that you want to discuss? Maybe we can also discuss some of these ideas tomorrow, like during the session.
Yeah, regarding the idea of TTL, it's called. Yeah, I mean, one of our pain points is really everything has to be a Docker image, right? So it's not just our controllers, it's the network functions, and even our kept functions are Docker containers. But I wonder why can't we just like have a local repository that every developer just has when you deploy it as part of your laptop? You just start a kind of the chart repository, the default one that comes with Docker Hub. Wouldn't that be easier, or am I missing some point here?
So you mean like a local repository inside of the sandbox, like to provision everything, like or like having a private Docker registry where like external developers can also share the
well, just private. Yeah, it's obviously only for one dev environment, but if you're pushing images locally to your own repository and pulling from there, I do know it's the little complication here is that if you're deploying it with Kind and it's your own repository, it's self-signed certificates, and you need the Kind cluster to so during installation, you have to tell it, I'm allowing you to pull images from this repository. You do have to do something, but it's, if we're setting up the entire environment, we can do that. And that way we're not depending on anything external service or anything. It's just all running on your laptop or whatever your environment is.
Yeah, I think that initially I started like exploring, especially using Harbor, because I guess it's a CNCF local rate. So I started exploring that one. The major problem with that particular project, they didn't like provide like a KRM installation way. So it was pretty hard to start like consuming the services. The other thing is like, I like the idea to have like a local registry, because probably that also can save us some time, like especially during the end-to-end. So, and I submit like a draft PR just to also try to capture the number of image pools. So that way we can also get some metrics, like how many kind containers can also consume that. Yeah, I like the idea, but yeah, to be honest, it's a little bit harder to integrate in the right ecosystem. So especially because hardware is like that limitation, doesn't have like a KRM way to install it, and it's very. So if we figuring out like how can we use that particular way, I'm in favor. The other option, like having an kind of external service, I also like that idea, because in that way, if let's say, for example, that you are working in some improvements in Porch, or like so I would be able to test your changes in my local environment. So I like that, like, level of external things where we can share like some images. I remember, like, when we have that particular issue with one of the services, so it was like we have to modify the catalog to start pointing to certain branch, and so maybe if we use like an external identity, maybe we can minimize that level of complexity, I guess.
Yeah, Victor. So first of all, thanks for presenting this and various options and stuff. Obviously, we are looking for a real integration test framework. So I wanted to know your opinion, since you're also involved in the other CNTI. Is that what it's called? The one you presented that was presented in the morning.
This one?
No. Not the, you remember the cloud native test infrastructure product that was, it had a framework for test development, and they were actually advocating for all the other groups to take that framework and add our own test, for example, either us or NSE. Or so do you think that will fit in as a integration test framework for Nephio? It's called CNTI. What was it called?
Oh, yeah. The CNT. Okay, yeah. The test suite. So yeah, probably that's a good thanks, because I was in blank. So
Okay.
yeah, this is my experience about the test suite. Sadly, this Watson is not here, but the kind of best practices are proposed in the CNTI framework is like so things like so the privilege that you can that your CNF has to have, like, for example, if you are using root permissions, that's something that we don't recommend it. So other thing, like we recommend to have like one single process per container. So all of those things are like the way that you create like your service, your CNFs. So that's the target. Like, I mean, we are not trying to provide best practices for the infrastructure, because ANOCAP is doing a great job for defining all these things. But the other thing is, like, I guess one of the missing pieces in that particular framework is like now is like onboarding. Like, how can we onboard CNFs? And I guess that's one of the great benefits that Nephio has. So my point is, like, if we want to use or like contribute back to that particular framework, what we have to do is, like, we have to define as a Nephio community what could be the best ways to maybe package things, or like package CNFs, and say, well, this is the proposal that we have, and maybe incorporate those in the test suite and also as part of the process. The other thing is, like, they have this test suite. So one of the things that I was also discussing with Sagar, so the nice thing is, like, we use KPT for shifting the left some of the workloads. So maybe one of the things that we can do, we can create like a KPT functions to run the test suite prior to the deployment. So in that way, we can say, well, I mean, prior to onboard certain CNF, so we can say, well, this is not following the best practices, and because you're failing this particular thing. So I don't know if that answered a little bit.
Yeah, actually, they said they had test suites written in Crystal.
Yeah, in Crystal language.
Yeah, Crystal language. So that's where my question was: do you think that can be used as an integration test tool for us, or or is it something that we could consider? I mean, I obviously not expecting an answer, but is it something that we could? Or is it not?
Yeah, we can integrate it. I mean, probably the only value that I will see to have it in the CI could be like saying, okay, OAI is following the best practices defined in the test suite. So it's basically it's the only result that we're going to get. So, but besides that, I don't think that you're getting, I mean, maybe we can use it as a gatekeeper, saying this deploy doesn't follow the best practices, don't do it. And maybe that's, I guess that's the value that we can use it.
Okay, thanks, Victor. Thanks for doing this.
Delivery of Nephio as a product. So the question is CNTI type of test and certification applicable to Nephio as a product? Is Nephio itself CNTI compliant versus Nephio using CNTI process to assess the compliance of a network function that needs to be onboarded? In that case, that will be OpenAir, 5GC, and all that kind of stuff. But before you deliver release 3, can you say you are CNTI compliant?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is yes. Most of the best practices and everything defined in that particular project, it is applicable for most of the workloads. I mean, we don't have like too much specific things for CNFs. Eventually, there are going to be certain functions that can. I mean, the great thing about this particular tool is that you can plug a lot of additional best practices. So yeah, we can use it as the same way that we use the OpenSSF test score, like so where we can say, well, besides that we are having this particular score, like we can also say, well, we are following the best practice that the test suite has.
If nobody else, so first of all, thank you for the tremendous work that I know how much work is in this, that SIG release, you and the whole SIG release group put into this. But the only thing that I want to say is a little bit connected to what Tal said, is that some of us are so unfortunate that sometimes we run the sandbox, the Nephio sandbox behind an HTTP proxy. That actually means that it has to be as self-contained as it is possible. You know that I had it something that worked locally. I pushed some of it already into and some of it unsuccessfully. I tried to work on that. You helped me a lot, Victor. Thank you for that as well. That's all I want to say right now. You don't even have to answer. I just want to say that some of us, after the install script finished, we basically do not have access to the outside internet. And okay, that's it.
No, and good that you take that particular point, because I guess if we use that particular pre-bake approach, maybe we can provide those images, and hopefully that solves the issue to those kind of environments. But yeah. Oh, well, I just encourage to anyone just to, if you want to
Take off yet? I see somebody about to leave. I got something.
Lock the exits.
no, well, this is